What is up, everybody? This is Martin Anaya, and you are watching a very, very special edition of The Breakdown. And what is The Breakdown? The Breakdown is this thing that we do here at the California Film Foundation every pretty much month that really exposes the audience to a local filmmaker or an international filmmaker, somebody that we have a lot of esteem for. And I got to tell you, I've got no more esteem in the world than I do for this gentleman that I'm going to be introducing to you today. But before we do that, real quickly, again, if you're a filmmaker or if you're somebody who's involved in the film arts, or maybe just a film fan that's fascinated with how it works, the background, what it's all about, got to go to this website right here. It's californiafilm.net. The California Film Foundation is a resource for all kinds of activity and interesting facts about film, and it's a devotional resource to helping educate people about film. Not only the art of film, but also the how-to. So again, if you're a filmmaker or you're an aspiring filmmaker, I don't care if you're a grip, gaffer, I don't care if you're a PA, I don't care if you're a director, you want to get involved in this. We also have screenwriting workshops, we have acting workshops. It's a huge resource. We also run the Sacramento International Film Festival, which brings me to today's guest. As you guys know, and many of you who watch this regularly, the Sacramento International Film Festival is what we call the premier cinema experience for Northern California. It's been around now in its 26th year, but it started its life being known as the Sacramento Festival of Cinema. And the gentleman who brought it to us is a guy named Kenneth Segura Knoll, and he is our very special guest today. And we're going to learn about Ken Knoll. We're going to learn about his history with the film festival, and we're going to learn a little bit about his history as a filmmaker. I'm very, very excited to welcome Mr. Ken Knoll to the broadcast today. Ken, my brother from another mother, how's it going, buddy?
It is wonderful coming from the land of enchantment.
That's right. You're in Nuevo Mexico, the land of enchantment, man. What's that like living out there?
Oh, I love it. And there's film is growing here so rapidly. You can't drive down the road without running into a production. So it's great.
Oh man, tell me about that, Ken, if you don't mind, because as I understand it, they have Albuquerque Studios. And by the way, are you in Santa Fe? Where do you live?
I live in the East Mountains of Albuquerque. Across, I'm 42 miles. In the Sandias, yeah. And I'm 42 miles from Santa Fe and 28 miles from Albuquerque, or I'm exactly half point from Albuquerque Studios, which is now Netflix Studios, and Santa Fe Studios. I'm right at I can drive 30 miles one way or 30 miles the other way, and I'm at a major motion picture studio.
So what's the deal? Is Netflix showing all of their stuff there now? Is that, or they're making all of their stuff at the Netflix studios?
No, they were pretty clear that, they got so much production going on. But Albuquerque Studios is a first-class studio facility. It's got 9 stages. They've just approved a back lot. And so they're in the stage business. And they're renting stages to all kinds. Breaking Bad was shot there, of course. Breaking Bad is really the TV show that put New Mexico on the map.
Sure.
Although there's been a lot of productions here.
Yeah.
And it's growing. And of course, the main reason is the tax incentive.
Yeah, absolutely. They got money for this thing. Now I got to tell you, man, because I'm kind of envious a little bit because my entire family's from New Mexico.
Of course.
My dad immigrated to California when he was a young man after the Korean War, and my uncle Sal, and they located initially in LA, but then eventually up here. But man, that's all they would ever talk about is the old country. And I was fortunate because my uncle wrote the book Bless Me Ultima. His name was Rodolfo Anaya. And that eventually, we got a movie made of that back in 2012. And so, for me, the fact that you're back there, man, I'm envious of you because you get the best of all worlds. You get to still remain active in the film world, and plus you get to enjoy the land of enchantment every day. But I want to know what I'd like to ask you is, you eventually moved back there. You're from New Mexico originally, is that right?
I was born in Las Vegas, New Mexico.
Mm-hmm. Tell me about that. What was that like growing up?
Well, Las Vegas is a very unique town. It's been known as the Wild of the Wild West, but it was divided into two towns. Basically, West Las Vegas was Hispanic, East Las Vegas was Anglo, and it was two cities when me growing up. But Las Vegas is very unique. There's been some great movies. My first exposure to the movies was being an extra in Easy Rider, and so I got the bug that early in the game. When I graduated from high school, Governor Cargo put the first film incentive program on, and this is 1975. I got to work with Linda Blair and Martin Sheen on a movie called Sweet Hostage.
Mm-hmm.
And during the training program, met a guy named Brian Frankish. And Brian Frankish went on to produce Field of Dreams and many films, but he made an error. I said it's an error. He told me, if you're ever in LA, look me up. 3 weeks later, my 68 Dodge van was packed and I was on my way to Hollywood. But as I left New Mexico, I said, I'm coming back when I turn 50. And that was always my plan. And when I turned 50, I moved here to New Mexico. I actually bought the house I live in off the internet.
That's how motivated you. I just think it's funny because when I hear you talk, and I hear my dad and my uncle in my ear talking about the old country and going back to the old country.
And we have a unique relationship to your family. Is that I knew Rodolfo because one, Bless Me Ultima was required reading in high school for me.
Oh, sure.
And then I'm a big fan of all his books, including the book Tortuga.
Yeah, you and I were talking about that book. That needs to be the next movie, man. You got to make that.
Yeah, it's on the list.
On the to-do list.
Where Bless Me Ultima takes place is in El Valle, and that's where my family had finally settled. And then,
so was it Santa Rosa, New Mexico? Now, see, folks, you got to bear with us here at home because now we're going to go into a little etymology, genealogy background. But was it Santa Rosa, Pastura? What was the area there of New Mexico?
It's okay. El Valle was about 29 miles from Santa Rosa.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's where Pastura and El Valle and all that was. Eventually, my great-grandfather ended up being the sheriff in Santa Rosa.
Wow.
And lived in Puerto de Luna.
Yeah.
And that's where all the Anayas lived.
That's where all the Anayas came from. Well, right. I have I'm going to show it to you one day, but I have a genealogy record. It's what it is it's the original, the very first land grant in what is now the United States. The very first land grant of the United States was a land grant that was given by the King of Spain, and there were originally 5 families, Andres Anaya being one of them. My great grandpa back in 16, I think it was 31, somewhere in that time frame.
Right.
They went from Mexico City to settle in what is today now known as, metropolitan, Albuquerque and surrounding areas. But anyway, that's a whole nother story, but we definitely got to plumb that one of these days. But what I want to know is, I want to know about you, because before you founded the then known as Sacramento Festival of Cinema, before you did that, you were a filmmaker in your own right. But what I want to know is what landed you in Sacramento?
So what landed me in Sacramento is I went out to Hollywood and met with Brian, and at the time there was a strike, director strike, and I decided I wanted to pursue my degree, and he suggested I go up to Foothill College, which is in the Bay Area, and study with a filmmaker named Zach Elisha, who was a documentary filmmaker, and he's the one that really, got me excited about documentary filmmaking. We did a documentary in the Birch Springs, Arizona, which is Navajo Reservation, and based on that film that I had worked on and shot, I shot with a guy named Charlie Silver, who went on to be a cinematographer in Hollywood. I met Dr. Steve Arvizu from Stanford, and he had it was called the Cross Cultural Resource Center in Sacramento.
In Sacramento, part of Sac State, right?
Cal State University, Sacramento. And so he convinced me. He had just gotten a large grant to do documentary filmmaking in Micronesia. So he offered me a job, and I came to work. And I was still undergraduate, so I was working on my degree in filmmaking. And one of my instructor was Jose Camacho, and Jose and I became very good friends. I got involved with the Royal Chicano Air Force.
Oh my God!
We were kind of the filmmaking arm of the Royal Chicano Air Force.
And Jose Montoya, who of course, I don't know if he was I don't know if he would have been like the equivalent of the chairman of the board, like Frank Sinatra of the Royal Chicano Air Force.
He was remember the Royal Chicano Air Force. They ran it like a military operation. It was a joke. He was the general.
He was the general. Okay, so
him and Estevania were the two generals.
I find it hard to believe I had a girlfriend when we were doing. I'm going to tell you a really quick aside. I had a girlfriend, and she's passed away now. Sadly, she got hit by a car and killed. But she was a beautiful young lady, and Esteban Villa really loved beautiful young ladies, and loved it even more so to paint their pictures. Well, one time we were at the festival, and we had a Chicano film there called Speeder Kills. I think I told you about this, but it was a Chicano punk rock band and we were at the Crest Theater, and I had invited all the old RCAF guys, and Esteban Villa on a napkin drew the most amazing portrait of this young lady, and then he presented it to her, and we were both like looking at it like, oh my God, we got to frame this. And so I still have it to this day. It was just on a little cocktail napkin at the Crest. But here's my question about just getting back to Montoya. So it is true that Montoya did a lot of work kind of in and around the film industry. Is that true?
Well, he had ties to Daniel Valdez and Luis Valdez, and
I'm thinking about specifically about the movie Zoot Suit.
Right. So remember that the Royal Chicano Air Force became and through Joe Serna. Remember Joe Serna and Jose Montoya and Esteban were all faculty at Cal State University, Sacramento. So this was all part of the Chicano faculty. And then you had the Royal Chicano Air Force, and they did a lot of artwork for the United Farm Workers, for Dolores Huerta, who's from New Mexico also. So we all had this bonding because of the New Mexico tie. But and
Montoya was from New Mexico. I never knew that. I only found that out much later. Right. All these New Mexico ties.
And Dolores Huerta.
Yeah.
So through that, at the time, Daniel Valdez was
he did a movie, right? He was getting prepared for the Zoot Suit movie.
No, Daniel was the brother. So Daniel recorded a couple of albums and started being in movies.
I'm thinking of Luis. Luis was the filmmaker, and Daniel got it. Okay. Right.
And Luis was the filmmaker. Daniel was the actor, musician, the two brothers. And so through that, Montoya started doing some work for the film industry.
He started getting art director jobs and so forth, right? Or did he do the poster?
They would use his artwork for posters and promotions. And, a lot of that.
Do a lot worse.
Yeah, the Teatro Campesino was the one. If you remember Teatro Campesino, which was Luis Valdez, they would have the RCAF do the artwork for them for a lot of things.
Well, listen,
and then Joe Serna is important because that's the time with Joe Serna.
Okay.
Joe set up a print shop, and because Joe taught Chicano studies and political science courses, where he would print political signs as the in for the UFW's contribution to campaigns. And they set that all up on Franklin Boulevard. And it was a crazy time.
And folks at home, I just got to tell you, because this sounds like we're going deep into the weeds, and we are, but I just want to tell the folks at home, if you don't know who the RCAF was, the Royal Chicano Air Force, and you're an art major or you are into art, and by the way, I've got several of my interns listening on the call today, and I'm going to bring them in and take some of their questions a little bit later. But if you don't know who the RCAF was, I just got to tell you, with Jose Montoya, Juanichi, Esteban Villa, all these guys that we're talking about, they were Favela. They were the guys that, along with Dolores Huerta and those guys were the brains of the operation as far as operational. But these guys brought in the culture, the art, and more than just posters and artwork to promote events. What they did was almost establish almost a mythic kind of belief that these farm workers, many of them dirt poor laborers, took to then become more powerful and to begin to assert their rights as human beings, to be treated as human beings and not as slaves. And this is an important part where art and culture and commerce and all those things kind of come together. My question to you, because I know at that time, I don't know when it was that you met Joe Serna, but I know that there's an interesting history of how you and Joe formulated and how the Sacramento Festival of Cinema, Sacramento Film Festival, came to be. But before you actually tell me that story, I want to know, because I understand that you were part of a delegation, a U.S. delegation that went to Cuba for the first film festival held in Cuba for the Pan Latin American experience. Is that right?
That's correct. First of all, we had done a documentary, Jose and I, on Jose Montoya, and it was about his art, his poetry, his connection to Zoot Suits, and Lalo Guerrero was part of the documentary, and it was about being a pachuco or being a Zoot Suiter, and we ended up being invited to go to Cuba to show the film. And there was a gentleman by the name of Jesus Trevino, who is a great filmmaker, ended up being a director and head of the DGA's minority outreach program. But there was 33 of us that went to Havana as a part of the first Latin American Film Festival. And we were there for 3 weeks, and I must have seen over 300 movies, because we would get up every day and go watch movies till midnight. And it was so that was my experience, first exposure to international film festivals. Then after that, I ended up going to the Toronto Film Festival, the San Francisco International Festival, and I was exposed to that. Of course, Joe Serna was my Chicano studies teacher at Sac State.
Long before he was mayor, right? Long before.
Right before he was mayor. And then I ended up teaching and part-time in the faculty. So I was part of the Chicano. And so we had this relationship. Sidebar, someday I'll tell you about Joe Serna and golf. But anyway,
I got to tell you, so again, I just got to do these little asides, because some people might be watching this and they don't know a lot about the history of Sacramento or Sacramento as it relates to the farm labor movement. Cesar Chavez. Right now, in the White House, President Biden, as we're recording this, has a bust of Cesar Chavez that sits behind his desk, behind the Resolute desk. It's a bust of Cesar Chavez. And the thing is that Cesar Chavez and Dolores Huerta were arguably the brains of the operation, but it took a village, and it took all of these people, including the arts and the people like Jose and like Juanichi and all these guys, to put this together. And so for people at home that are watching this, again, it's not only just a history of the Sacramento Film Festival, it's a history of the arts in California and how those arts impact culture and vice versa. So, Ken, what I wanted to ask you is, but again, as you started to formulate and you started to become a documentary filmmaker in your own right, and then eventually you opened up your own studio. And for a long time, it's been the dream of our organization to have a studio that is a shared space that maybe has a sound stage, but also has a shared space where students and all kinds of artists and folks can get together. But the reality is, you kind of had that like years ago, no? A little bit.
Oh yeah. And the story about the studio is I met a guy named Scott Peterson, who is a DP there in Sacramento, and he had shot Budweiser commercials, movies, lived in Placerville, and him and I decided we were going to rent a building and set up a studio. Unfortunately, he passed away. He had a heart attack. They were shooting a commercial for Exxon on an oil rig. So now I was kind of caught with right in the middle of doing this. So I went to Mike Malberg, who was a student, and I were student together in the filmmaking program at Sac State, and we had done stuff together. And the Malbergs and I got together and took the studio over that was what is B Street Studios, which became the B Street Theater. And we were there for probably 3 or 4 years, and we were doing a lot of government work. But I want to just go back a little bit to the cross-cultural research. Dr. Steve Arvizu would come to me and say, the United Farm Workers are having a rally or are marching down in Delano. Go film it, And so there we go. We'd go film it. Also, at the time, the American Indian Dennis Banks and them were held up at DQ University.
Over in Davis, right?
Over in Davis.
Yeah.
I was the only filmmaker that was allowed to go in and shoot film. So I was I'd bring out the film, take it over to Channel 3, process it, and then we'd give the networks footage, and I would interview Dennis Banks. And that's all, I give Dr. Steve Arvizo was my mentor.
Wow.
And Joe Serna, and it was a great time. I mean,
it sounds like a very fertile time, and there was a lot of creativity going on, and people were really imagining all the possibilities for Sacramento filmmaking, for art and culture more broadly. So eventually,
it was with the support of Joe and all these mentors that they said, "Why don't you open up a studio?" And that's how I ended up opening up the studio that we had.
How many different producers were a part of that?
Well, the first studio, there was about 4 of us. The larger studio, we had a grip company with us, Dave Bungie, Grip Services.
Yep, Bungie.
We had Louis Warfield was art director and sets. We had Derek Packard, Double Vision was with us. And so a lot of the top filmmakers that were production companies came in as the co-op called Delta Studios.
And how would you describe the general kind of the I mean, I'm sure you weren't getting a lot of film work, not like major movies, but what were you getting as far as work?
Being in Sacramento, you're dependent on state work. So we would do, I had the contract for the Department of Resources, the Department of Corrections, Department of Justice, all these contracts that we had, we were servicing. But at the same time, we were servicing the industry. We did Real Stories of the Highway Patrol. We did all the live reenactments, or not the live, but the reenactments. We were doing all these hard copy type of shows. And then at the time, Panavision needed a place to put cameras, and so did Tyler Mount, because we had like a pink Cadillac, and
getting some of these movies that are still, by the way. I went on the Sacramento Film
right.
the Film Commission website the other day, and I counted maybe 12 movies that were shot locally that were maybe local productions. Like 8 of them had been in the Festival of Cinema or the Sacramento Film Festival at one point. Like almost like all the ones that you would think that had any Sacramento ties were in the film festival.
Yeah, and so that's we I was always politically involved, with Joe Serna and that group, and so I did a lot of political commercials. At the time, there was a guy named Steve Thompson who was chief of staff for Willie Brown, and they would feed us a lot of commercial work to do. So we would do a lot of politicals. So industrials, politicals, servicing movies, however we could service it. Of course, I worked on American Me with Eddie Olmos. Our connections to the Department of Corrections, we helped them get into Folsom to shoot the what was shot in Folsom.
And
this is an important point of that. The producer for American Me was Brian Frankish, my mentor.
Yeah. Wow. American Me, Zoot Suit, some of these like seminal films, and then of course with some of the films that got shot, some of the Clint Eastwood films like Pink Cadillac and so forth that came later, a lot. But let's talk
Wisdom with Emilio Estevez.
Wisdom with Emilio Estevez.
That was an interesting film because Emilio Estevez directed that film.
He did.
Yes, and he acted in it.
He sure did.
And the person that he had, the only way they would let him do that is if he had a well-known director mentor him. That was Bob Wise. And Bob Wise directed.
Robert Wise, who'd done, well, of course, my favorite from him was he did Star Trek, the movie, the original Star Trek film, but a bunch of
West Side Story.
West Side Story. Yeah, that's where most people are going to remember him from.
Right.
Sure.
So we got to hang.
Got some intelligentsia going on there, man. You got some chops for sure. Here's what I want to. We got to get into the Sacramento Film Festival because legend has it, and I want you to tell the story. I'm not going to tell it, but legend has it that by this point you were working with the city, you were doing things for the city, and you had a long-standing relationship with now Mayor of Sacramento, Joe Serna. And why don't you pick it up from there? How did the Sacramento Festival of Cinema, as it was known at the formation, how did that come to be?
So Joe Serna had this vision of having the Sacramento be the city of festivals. And one of the things he had done, he had set up a Thursday night market and right on K Street. And part of that, everybody participated. And the Crest Theater was one of the participants. So as you could go in there and watch movies at the Thursday night market. So we went in, Joe Serna, I happened to run into him, and we went in there, we watched a couple of movies, and I turned to Joe Serna and I said, Joe, what this town really needs is an international film festival to attract. And he said, we should do that. And he said, you should do it because you've been to film festivals. And he said, but I want you to make it on one. I'll support it on one condition. He said that you bring Cantinflas films. And if you don't know who Cantinflas is, he was the Jerry Lewis of Mexican movies.
Cantinflas.
I said, absolutely.
Hang on, man. Hold on. So wait a minute. So when you asked him the question, okay, hey, maybe because you guys were at the Crest, right? It was at
the Crest.
So it was just a thought that came into your head. You didn't have any idea that he was going to task you to do it, did you?
No.
You were just like, hey, we're at the Crest. It's a beautiful movie theater. We should have a film festival, right?
Right. And the other thing I had done at the time was we had done the Latin Music Festival with the Royal Chicano Air Force, and so he knew we had done festivals, and But anyway, as we were walking out, Joe said to me, "Hey, Ken, how much do you think it would cost to do a film festival?" And I said, "Heck, 25,000." I threw a number out there.
Number out there.
So I'm in my office at the studio, and I get a call. It's the Directorate of Housing Redevelopment, and he says, Joe Serna wants a film festival, and he said you needed $25,000. We're going to take it out of this budget. There I was, the dog that caught the car. I didn't know what to do. So, I started doing research, and I started calling film festivals, and everybody told me the same thing. Key to a good film festival is that you got to find, if you're going to make it an international film festival where you bring different films, or if you're going to program different films, you need a programmer, a film programmer. So go find yourself a good film programmer. And I searched around, and I found a guy named Mark Smolowitz out of the Bay Area. Well, that was, when I talked to him, the cost of that was almost the whole $25,000.
Oh, sure, easily.
And I'm like, oh my God, now what do I do? In the meantime, so I go down and I to talk to Joe, and we're in his office, and Joe's lecturing me. I say, okay, you're going to do this film festival, but it's got to be inclusive. You got to include everybody.
That's right.
And he said, wouldn't it be great to have like a night where we have Jewish films, and a night when we have Latino films, and a night when we have African-American films? And I go, he keeps layering this on me.
Sure.
And I'm looking at this, what I had envisioned, a 3-day festival. Now it's grown to a 13-day festival to add everybody. So I said to Joe, 25,000 is not enough money.
Not even gonna. You can't even pay for the venue with that. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So he got on the phone and started calling the B, the PG&E, AT&T, and everybody was, okay, we'll kick in. And that's how the first film festival became what it was. And so in the vision, as I talked to the Jewish Federation, as I talked to the gay and lesbian community, it became apparent that they all wanted to do it. They
wanted to do their own thing. Yeah, they wanted to do their own thing.
Well, they wanted to be part of it, but we got into a kind of logistics problem. Okay, who gets the best nights, and how do I choose that?
Right. How do you choose that? Yeah.
Right. So eventually, these groups ended up forming their own film, and we encouraged it. That's the other thing, is we encourage it. You want to break off and have your film festival not be part of the 13 days or whatever, that's okay. But we'll do this. We'll help you facilitate it. We'll lend you our programmer. We'll pay for the programmer, and he'll help you program it. Yeah. And that's how the Sacramento Festival of Cinema grew.
Well, I want to talk a little bit about some of those early years, and I got a couple of pictures I'm going to put up here. But just to your point about that, because a lot of people think, oh, well, there's too many film festivals, and we got to consolidate and everything. It's like, look, what we did in the later years after you did your thing was there wasn't a Latino film festival. There wasn't a Black film festival. There were efforts that had been made sporadically here or there. But we took the same notion that you had. And again, by the way, not even knowing what you had done, because you had already moved away by that point. But we took the same notion and then replicated that and said, look, we're going to facilitate through an association so that we have a Sacramento Black Film Festival, so that we have a Sacramento Asian Film Festival, so that we have a Sacramento Latino Film Festival. And you can run that autonomously, but with our support and guidance and help. And that's what we've done for the 20-something years since then, is just exactly. And when you first told me that, I was like, oh my God, he already had the key. And again, it goes right in line with Serna's original vision of a city of festivals. And I know that there's still an arts grant to this day. And I don't know, I got to look at it, because I don't know if they actually give him credit. They probably do. but that this idea of the city of festivals, that when you told me that that was a Serna idea, and not just film festivals, but all kinds of cultural festivals, folkloric festivals, you name it, right? And also in later years, they've started to now think about branching out, that it's not all downtown, it's not all happening at the crest,
Right.
in the city core, but it is happening in the in the corridors, right? In Del Paso, in Oak Park, down in Meadowview, and different places, so that those folks too can have a sense of community pride and so forth.
Right.
That's something that we've also tried to do by booking films at the Crest, or not just at the Crest, but by booking films at the Guild Theater, by booking films in Del Paso, et cetera, et cetera. And that's been a part of that mission. So I thank you for pointing that out.
And you have to remember back then, the biggest Sacramento event was the Jazz Festival.
Yep.
Thousands of people come to the Jazz Festival.
Sure.
And it put Sacramento on the market beyond Sacramento. It became to the tourists. It was something that would draw people to Sacramento. So festivals was really the idea behind Joe's vision. He would say, I would love to see a festival every weekend, because and the other part that the festival would do, at the time, Sacramento was a ghost town downtown. Mm-hmm. It would bring people back to the downtown area. So that was the impetus of it. One of the things that
downtown was kind of a ghost town on those years, so I understand that. Now it's thriving. But by the way, I'm looking at, while you're talking, and keep telling me about it, but what's this that we're looking at?
So that was our 1998 film festival poster. Mm-hmm. And we decided that every year we're going to have a theme. That year the theme was, when you go to a film festival and it's different cultures, it really makes you think. So that was the motivation of that film festival poster, films that make you think.
Got it.
Now the uniqueness of that poster, and I'm sorry I can't remember the guy's name, but he was a young student that was studying, and he had mastered animation.
These look like it's digital animation. Yeah,
it's 98. He's doing that kind of digital. He went on to work for Pixar, and I'm sorry I can't remember his name.
Jeez.
Pixar and Lucasfilms, but that was kind of the whole. If you see it, he's sitting on film cans.
Mm-hmm.
And he's in front of the building that's across the street over the river at the time was called the Money Store at the time. But
I got to tell you something. He's not the only young guy that digital animator that went on to work for Pixar, because another Northern California, Adrian Molina, who we honored a couple of years ago at the Sacramento Film Festival, is from right up here, right up the road from us, and of course wrote and directed the movie Coco. But he's a little Northern California kid, little Latino kid from right here. And again, we honored him at the film festival, but that tradition continues of utilizing of having those kids come up through the festival ranks, and also bringing people back who've gone on, and then bringing them back to educate the next generation.
The other great part of the festival that Bill Bronston came to us and said, I want to do a youth film festival. And we gave him Friday. Fridays was the Tower of Youth Film Festival.
Right.
And Tower Records, Ross Solomon, and I were on a board of directors. I went to Ross and I said, will you support the youth? He was in. I'm in. And he says, I just want you to call it the Tower, Tower of Youth Film
Tower
Festival.
of Youth. That was Russ's contribution.
That was Ross.
A few years ago, and I'm sorry I don't have the footage on here. Maybe we'll insert it in post, so you can just clip that out. I'll rephrase it. A few years ago, we honored you at the Tower Theater, and I wish we had some pictures from that time, or maybe I hope you got some. But I'll tell you something. it was one of the biggest thrills for me because this was a movie that we played, that we premiered, that was a Colin Hanks film. Colin Hanks, of course, being Tom Hanks' son. Now, Colin grew up in Sacramento because his dad went to Sac State, because Tom Hanks went to Sac State.
When he was in our class.
And he took all those classes too. But he was a big cinephile, and so we had to play the movie. We normally played movies at the Crest or sometimes at the Crocker, but we had to play the movie at the Tower because the film was about the history of the Tower franchise, the history of the Tower Records. So one of the things that happened that night was that we got to honor you, and I'm very proud of that. Got to honor Ron Cooper, who took the baton with me from you. It was really Ron and you that were the main players. But then we also got to honor Russ Solomon as well. And for that, I'm always eternally grateful because I think that was one of the last things prior to his passing. One of the last public things that he did was accept this honor on behalf for his work with the Tower of Youth. Now, in addition, you had some other big names at the film festival. Who's this guy that you're pictured with?
That's Michael Moore.
And what was Michael Moore doing?
I got a logistic problem here.
You got to remember what he was doing.
No. I need to plug in my computer's about to go dead, and I'm sorry.
Don't let that happen. Well, while you're doing that, I'm going to bring in a couple of my interns here. So I'm going to let you do that for a minute.
Right.
I'm just going to bring in a couple of my interns, the folks that are kind of like doing the thing with me here. And did you guys even know? Do you guys even? Okay, Fatima, how are you? All right, I'm gonna pull Ken off for a minute so that he can get his logistics figured out. And then we've got Josie. Hi, Josie.
Hi.
And then we've got Angelique. Now, Angelique, you heard him talking. Now, Angelique, you're aren't you a digital animation major over at UOP right now? At the
Yes.
Program.
Yeah, I'm in the Media X program with like filmmaking. It's kind of a combination of like animation, filmmaking, and photography. So
now, when he gets back and we start talking to him again, what do you want to ask Ken about the early days or the old school of art? Because I mean, as an animator, I know you're into art.
Yeah, I can ask him like I was asking if he was like working. So did he work like as an animator? Like was that a job that he did?
Ken, no, I don't think so. We can ask him. We'll ask him when he comes back. I don't think so. But that kid that he brought in that had done that poster and that went on to where, and see, now we're going to have to remember who the name was because he's probably gone on to have quite the career, like I'm sure you will. What about you, Fatima? What kind of question might you have for Ken? Or what do you find fascinating about hearing this history, the very early history of the film festival?
Well, I was interested in how he said he had his kind of film journey in different countries. I know he mentioned he was involved in Havana, Cuba, and I think he mentioned other countries in South America. So I just want to ask like how his experiences varied.
Oh God, yeah, and how they shaped him. Yeah, that's a great question. I'm sure it was quite something. We'll ask him when he comes back in. What about you, Josie? What are you thinking?
I always like hearing about what people's like ideas for their next steps are, especially like with COVID, after he's probably had more time to like relax a little bit and think about his past experiences, like what he has in mind for the future.
Well, we'll ask him all that stuff. It looks like he's come back on here. I don't know how much you could hear, Ken. Let me bring him back in here. I don't know how much you could hear about the questions there, Ken. Did you get your power figured out there? You got it?
Yeah. I just had to move a cable a little over.
No worries, man. No worries. So Angelique was asking about if you'd ever had any experiences in digital animation and what those might be.
I've never had a lot of experience in digital animation, but when we were in Guam, we picked up a contract to do some educational videos for Guam School District about the Legend of the Mermaid, back to La Serena. And what we did is we did what's called rotoscoping. And
do you know what that means, Angelique? She's nodding her head.
Oh yeah, I did a little bit of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at the time, Brian Frankish, my mentor, was producing a film called American Pie, and I had worked on that a little bit, and so we ended up filming on 16 millimeter the action of the mermaid, and we actually had a woman who we dressed as a mermaid, and she swam in the pool, and what we did is with the Royal Chicano Air Force, we set up a rotoscoping room out on Franklin, and what you do is you project the each frame of the film, and then they draw the image,
right,
and then they draw the backgrounds.
right.
So it wasn't digital animation, but it was a different form of animation, and I got my experience of doing animation.
By the way, American Pie, not for nothing, but we had one of the stars of American Pie, and we did a retrospective about 2 years ago, just before the pandemic. I think it was 2018, and our opening party was the American Pie party that year.
So the one experience I had with some digital animation is in the industrial market. We did a lot of building simulations, or anytime we had something that we were doing for the Department of Corrections or something, we would do the animation. But there were not very many people doing it. And that one young man,
back in those days, it was a brand new thing.
Though the gentleman that did the poster for us that's how I met him, because I hired him to do some stuff for me one day, and he was great.
Well, and as a producer, you might not do everything, but you have to be aware of all the things that are coming into it. Fatima and I think Josie had a little bit of question, more of a kind of a cultural impact question, and that related to when you went overseas, or specifically when you went to Cuba. Other than obviously inspire you about what a film festival could be, what kind of were some of the ways that you felt like maybe it impacted you as an artist or as a filmmaker?
So first of all, being from New Mexico, my grandma raised me. My first language was Spanish. So when I hit Cuba, I could speak Spanish, and that was a great advantage. But from the moment we hit Cuba, it was amazing. As we're driving in the bus, and you have to understand, I'm with 32 other Latino filmmakers, Chicano filmmakers, and we see these 1960 and 50 cars in perfect condition. It was a lowrider's heaven.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
Well, we could say, wow, but we one of the things we did when we went to Cuba is we took a 60 millimeter projector with us, and we took a generator so that we could show our films out in the community. And every Wednesday in Cuba, they have meetings of the block, and you don't see police in Cuba, but they would deal with the issues of that neighborhood. And we took our screen and we showed them. Obviously everybody in Cuba was interested in the Latino and the Chicano communities in the United States, because we have so much in common as language, history, and everybody wanted to know about Carlos Santana. Everybody loved
Carlos. Kid, right?
So it really it was a enlightenment of how the one thing that always was in our Jose and I were always noticing is that how small the world was. We're in Guam, then we're in Cuba, but it was like we're in the same place.
Right.
We're in East LA. We had gone to East LA before we had gone to with Jesus Trevino. Now we're in Cuba, and the people there's something common. Yet we're 3,000, 4,000 miles apart. Whatever. Yeah. And that was probably the most influence to me, is that people have so much in common, no matter where you're from. You just have to find it. the obviously in the Cuban, you got like Hispanic, but you have the Afro influence also. So we would go out and listen to music or go to neighborhoods, and that was so common.
Sure. And I got to say, as I hear you talking, and by the way, thank you to our young ladies for asking the questions and for wanting to expand their mind and so forth. But I got to say, to be really honest with you, man, with what you guys, when I hear you talking, and I think about the pedigree of this film festival, even in the very early years, having a guy like Michael Moore, having these kind of people who, quite frankly, epitomize all different facets of cinema and not just one type of experience, but the entire. We had a filmmaker. His name was Eduardo Nava, and he had a film called The American Tapestry that was a couple of years after you had gone back to the land of enchantment. And I remember what Nava was talking about in that movie was that it takes all of the colors and all of the threads to weave together. And of course, he was talking about a Mexican tapestry, but his movie was American Tapestry, right? It was the American experience.
No, I'm familiar with
all of the colors of the rainbow, all of the threads woven together. And that's more than anything. I just want to say, with just a few minutes left here, for you, for me, that's what I think that the legacy was that you left for us, was these very different experiences, the very different wonderful filmmakers you brought in. Karen Black, who we haven't even talked about. By the way, I know you got a really interesting little story. I'm gonna ask you to tell it in a second about Karen Black. But my point is that it was all of these things that came together that made the film festival what it was and what it is. And now that we've been able to have these spin-off events like Cine Latino and Cine Soul and Cine Asia that kind of bring in these different various cultural aspects, it was all due to what the original vision that you and that Joe had putting this thing together in the outset.
Let me tell you the Michael Moore story real quick.
Oh, tell me. I got to hear this.
So this woman came into my office, and she was part of this literary book, write books. And she says, "Well, man, I would love to have Michael Moore here because he had a book, and he had done his big movie, and then he was coming out with Bowling for Columbine, I think it was one of those movies." And I said, "I'll try it." So I picked up the phone and I called someone I knew, who I knew would put me in contact with him, and they put me in contact with him, and he answered the phone. And I told him who it was, what we're trying to do. And I said, "Could you come to our film festival?" And he says, "Of course I'll come to your film festival." And then he says, and I said, "I'll get you a room." He said, "Don't worry about putting me up. My sister lives in Grass Valley. I'll stay with my sister." I said, "I'll have a limo pick you up." He goes, "No, don't worry about it. My sister, my brother-in-law will pick me up. I'll pay for your flight. I'll have the publisher of the book pay for the flight." So he came for free, and he was the most gracious man I've ever met. As you can see that in the picture that you showed with Michael Moore, we're walking into the crest, and I can vision it right now. He says to me, "Did I shave this morning?" He's going to go on the stage in 10 minutes. And I said, "I don't think so." He said, "I don't think so." He says, I hope
wasn't really too worried about fashion, that guy, I don't think.
No, but he says to me, "I hope I'm not embarrassing you by not shaving." I said, "Are you kidding? You're Michael Moore." And we had whatever the crest was, it was sold out. And we had a great evening. Another story is Spike Lee. I was trying to get Spike Lee, and through the Independent Film channel, I got a hold of Spike Lee, and he says, "Well, I can't go. and I was embarrassed to call Spike Lee, but that's because it's a different story. But anyway, we knew each other.
I have a Spike Lee story I want to trade with you, but go ahead.
Yeah, and so he says he says I can't come, but I'm willing either to judge films. And I said, what if we have a script writing competition and you judge the scripts? And that's how he helped us out. We picked, and then Sundance committed $10,000. The Sundance Channel, the Independent Film Channel committed another $5,000. So that were the prices for the winners of the film fest, of the screenwriters. One of them went on to be made into a movie, Her Minor Thing.
Her Minor Thing. That's right.
Shot there.
At the film festival. It's still on the Sacramento Film Commission's website to this day. Yep.
Right. So,
wow, small world, man. All right. Can you tell me the Karen Black story real quick?
Karen Black had starred in a film by a woman who had produced and directed this film out of Davis. And she shot the whole thing on green screen. It was an amazing film. So Karen Black is coming to our film festival. And so Southwest Airlines had given us free tickets to bring people up. And so her husband and her daughter and her fly up. Well, I sent somebody to pick her up, and as they're driving to the theater, she starts dyeing her hair in the car.
Oh, wow.
And gets dye all over my assistant's brand new car. And her husband's smoking a cigar in the back seat. He sticks the cigar in the back in one of the little pockets in the back. So for the longest time, my assistant was, my car stinks and it's got hair dye in it. But the real story is that about 6 o'clock in the morning, I get a call, and it's Karen Black's husband. And she said, Karen Black went out for a walk last night. Karen went out for a walk and never came back. We have a 7 o'clock flight, and so there I go driving down to the, it was there on 16th Street where the hotel was. Well,
Vizcaya?
No, it was the one with where the theater was.
Okay.
Anyway,
okay.
Karen went out in the middle of the night, went walking, looking at all the old homes in Sacramento, and just walked all night and watched. And she shows up about 7 o'clock. They missed their plane. It cost me money because anyway. So that's Karen Black's story.
Wow, man. Well, listen, I know we could be here all day trading stories, but I want to first of all thank you for the mentorship over the years. Thank you for creating the film festival that to this day is Sacramento's premier cinema experience, and we try to keep that not as a braggart thing, but as a goal, as a North Star, if you will, to guide us in terms of the kind of films that we select, the kind of thing that we want to do, the support that we want to do, both for the filmmaking and for the arts community and for the appreciation of cinema as art. So I appreciate you for setting the example for us to follow. Anything that you want to mention? Any last comments or any ideas that maybe we haven't?
I want to thank you, because like I tell people, I did take the kickoff, but I fumbled at the 20-yard line, and Marty picked up the ball and ran it in for a touchdown. So I'm grateful that you've done it, and I appreciate all the work, because one of the things when I was doing the film festival, I was running a studio, and it was costing me money because it was at an economic time where the state of California was paying us with IOUs. So that was one of the hard parts of it. But you and Ron Cooper and the Access Sacramento, and part of us handing it over to Access Sacramento was that we weren't a nonprofit. We weren't able to get grant money, and a lot of the people who were Joe passed away. When Joe passed away, the money stopped. So we had to go out looking for grants and that type of thing. But I thank you. I think film is an international language. You know, you learn so much by making the movies as an independent filmmaker. You learn so much by watching the movies of independent filmmakers. And, story. I love a story. It's a good story. And it could be in a different format. It could be narrative. It can be, ethnographic. It could be documentary. There's just so much. And with technology today, you can create content, but never forget story. It's about the story. The tools are to collect the elements to tell your story, but it's about story. And it just amazes me how much the younger generation has to be able to do this. I helped start the media arts school here, which is a high school. But it amazes me when I go to film festivals. I watch student films that have the production value of multi-million dollar films.
Yeah.
And I think I told you this story. In New Mexico, we have that rebate, and there's a major movie being shot here, and it's got big stars. I'm not talking independent. It's a major movie, and the film commissioner called me. One of the film commissioner staff said, "Hey Ken, I went to the set." She said, "And they're shooting this movie on iPhones. I don't understand. Can we rebate that?" I said, "Well, you have to understand that iPhone's shooting 4K, and it's shooting 4K, what's now called uncompressed. So I can put that into my editor and manipulate the colors and do everything I need to do." So I hope, one of the things that I hope is that as people teach filmmaking, don't get so caught up in the technology,
Right.
but focus on the story.
Right.
And that's what I have to say, and tell a story as a song, or do it Jose Montoya's way, poetry. So you can do a poem, shoot it with your iPhone, and share it to the world. That's just mind-boggling. That you can I can put up a video and around the world people
It goes around the world. And then so some people think, oh well, that means that anybody can be the next whatever, and that means it's harder for me. I said, no, that means that the cream will really rise to the top, because if you really have something to say that people want to hear, you'll have the ability now, the platform to do it.
Can you imagine the music video? I can't remember. They have billions of views. Billions. That's amazing.
Yeah.
We used to be happy if we had a theater full of 400 people watching.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah. So.
Well, let's make this. Can we do this? Can we make this the beginning of more conversations, not the capper? And we'll make it the beginning of more conversations, and have you back in the very near future. Sound fair to you?
My heart is in two places, New Mexico and Sacramento.
All right, man.
So much of my life was there. My children, my grandchildren are there. I appreciate you opening the door every time you do for me to go and visit and relive great times that I spent.
Well, we'll do it again.
I was there from 1975 to 2006. So the beginning and ends of my life were New Mexico. The middle was in Sacramento. So
we'll get you back over here. Ken, I can't thank you enough, brother. Again, much appreciation. Saludos to you and all my gente over there in New Mexico. And we'll catch you again very soon, my brother. Thank you again for doing this today.
I appreciate it. Thank you.